Hey Filmosophers, I'm Michael.
And I'm Anna.
And you're Filmosophers.
You could be.
Right. Smash that subscribe button.
And hit the bell.
Taco Bell.
We actually do pair quite well with Taco Bell. Sponsor us, Taco Bell. I don't think they sponsor the last
Planning a trip?
Mm-hmm. Going to Europe. It's a school trip.
Did you get your passport?
Peter Parker here to pick up a passport, please.
Mini toothpaste?
Mm-hmm.
Pack your suit.
I just want to go on my trip with my friends. Europe doesn't really need a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. I think Nick Fury just hijacked our summer vacation.
Awesome!
You don't want any part of this.
We were watching Spider-Man Far From Home the other day, and it was actually your first time.
First time ever seeing a movie.
What?
Seeing this movie.
We were just struck by how much of it touches on a topic that we've wanted to do an episode on, epistemology.
Yeah.
He did what in his cup?
And potentially a little focus on philosophical skepticism in that area. So we're excited to dive into that.
We think we're excited to dive into it.
Oh, we think we are.
Well, I mean, I'm not certain about
How could we know?
Introspection.
Before we hop into the movie itself, why don't you lay out what epistemology is? We can go from there.
Yeah, epistemology, I think broadly speaking, is the study of what we commonly talk about in terms of knowing a thing. Like, what do we know? What does it mean to know?
And I think what will come into play there is trying to find what those core things that are required for knowledge are. The classic ones I've heard, justified true belief, or
right.
JTB kind
For
of a
short.
thing. Yeah, for short.
It's justified. You have a good basis for believing it. Like if you randomly believed it, it's not a very good basis. I'm speaking very shortly there. But true would be it corresponds to reality. Like it's raining outside. It has to be actually raining outside. And I have to believe that. So justified, true, this connection to reality, and you do believe it. There's some really interesting cases in there called the Gettier problems, a guy who came up with some really interesting, quirky ways that you could be like, somehow you're believing something true, but somehow like you shouldn't know it's true.
Right.
And you should look that up, it's funny. And skepticism and the questions of certainty come in there for sure in terms of like perfectly knowing or unquestionably knowing. And so that's a pretty high bar.
I think people can sometimes roll their eyes about epistemology because it's like, well, of course we know that we know stuff. But unfortunately, sometimes these conversations subtly come into play in areas that we care deeply about. Like,
Right.
How do you really know that, like, God exists? Or how do you really know that this person cares about you? Or how do you really know that it's worth having the will to live? Or something like all these things that actually have weighty consequences. Uncertainty can creep into these areas because they're not as easy as putting a lab coat on, a test tube, and your hypothesis, experiment, repeat kind of vibe. In that way, also, epistemology allows us to create a framework for knowledge that can work not only in science, but also like in things that we care deeply about, like philosophical or personal or spiritual concepts.
That's right. That relates to maybe some stuff in scientism, which is a whole nother episode, which
Yeah.
would be super cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so what were some of the springboards for epistemology from the movie?
Yeah, we're going to see a lot in this film. There's a lot of moments where he can't even trust like his 5 senses, and he has to appeal to this like 6th spidey sense, or spidey tingle as Aunt May insists on calling it.
To his chagrin.
Yeah, to his chagrin. Our senses are a lot of times the thing that we might appeal to in order for us to trust that something is real or really corresponds to reality or something. But what happens if those fail?
The holograms, which was so cool and well done. Would it work? I don't know. But with Tony Stark tech, maybe it can
Those
do it.
drones are just like, out of control.
Yeah, right. But that whole thing really relates to evil demon who was deceiving people such that they might not really know things. Or the brains in the vat was probably one of the loudest cinematic metaphors to epistemology. That was pretty intriguing. And then all the relational trust and character development and personal choices, and what knowledge basis do you make your lived life choices on, were really rich themes and well done in a kind of fun, popcorny kind of movie.
You pointed out this idea of an evil genius,
Right.
which relates to our topic of skepticism. And it could be a fun place to actually start here.
Yeah.
Let's watch that scene.
Yeah.
Where you headed?
I'm gonna go find MJ.
Good luck, kid. I'll give you about a 50-50 chance. You're pretty awkward, so.
Yeah. See you later, man.
See ya.
See, that wasn't so hard.
Somebody get this stupid costume off me!
You're so surprised when that happened the first time. It's like the part that stuck with me the most from the first one. It's like, dang.
Okay, we gotta eat it.
Get these connected to our system.
This is a big win, but we still got a lot of work to do. Okay, Tom! Give me that, Doug. To the man who brought us all together, our former boss, Tony Stark.
Yikes.
It was such a, I felt very Matrixy reveal, shocker when I was watching it. Specifically in the story, we see Mysterio with all this technology from these crews, embittered about Tony as their former boss, wanting to deceive the world into thinking Mysterio's a real superhero. And in this specific scene where Peter's being deceived about their environment, who Mysterio really is, Beck really is. He is basically living out a version of Descartes' evil demon thought experiment, considering is it possible that our whole life experience would be a facade, it would be somehow crafted by a super powerful demon, or again the Matrix, kind of a brain in the vat, programmatic simulation of your life and interactions. And it brings up the question of like, well, maybe we don't know what we know, even though we, in our day-to-day experience, it looks like it's a rainy day, it looks like the sun is coming out now, I know this person, this is a real person.
I'm pretty concerned of their existence.
I measured some stuff and that measurement's probably is actually about reality. Like whatever it is, maybe that's all fake, maybe it's just an illusion. Descartes lands on the fact of, well, I think, therefore I am. Even if everything is deceived, at least I'm a thinker that's deceivable. And that becomes like this sort of ground starting point for him in his thought projects. But that's a legitimate question. Is it possible that we would be deceived that way, that all of our lives are really that? Mm-hmm. But then the question is, on terms of pushing back a little bit, is like, well, why would we believe that?
Mm-hmm. Right. And I think probably a lot of people might naturally like roll their eyes at that level of skepticism, because it doesn't really feel like common sense. How the skeptic uses that, though, is not necessarily like, oh yeah, I think that's the most obvious answer. Things seem real but aren't real. It's more the fact that it has a logic to it that can't actually be easily refuted in the logic itself. So it's like, if the fact that we might be being deceived by an evil genius is possible, can we really know anything? It's more like the introduction of the if that's the power of the argument, or at least that's how it seems to me. And it's supposed to undermine the ability to have knowledge about anything, not in a malicious way. I'm not saying every skeptic is like trying to undermine knowledge in a malicious way, but more that someone who's dedicated to like aligning what they think is true based on like logic, and logic plays out, and you can't just easily refute this logic. So where do we go from here, kind of a thing?
Yeah, it I don't know all the skeptical arguments, but it kind of starts with this thought experiment of this is possible, maybe it's not plausible, but maybe it's possible, and therefore the things you want to say that you, with good reasoning and common sense foundations of things that are trustworthy and knowable, that but there's a chink in your armor, and maybe it all comes apart if there's this chink, and it's that there could be a Beck out there with a holographic deception world. And so though it can be like disheartening, or it can feel like worrisome, like, oh, maybe that's true, because those principles are like, they're legit, like it could have been the case. But it's really in competition in one way with all the other beliefs, in a way, that we have a legitimate, explicit kind of basis for. Like, we don't see like the tail of the demon running around, or we're not finding the wires. Like, if we were, every other day, we're like, oh my gosh, this person just woke up from the Matrix or something.
A light falls from the ceiling.
You should get serious. Actually, that was the name of the star that fell. Okay, anyways. And so you'd really have to commit to like an underlying principle that says, whenever there's a possibility that you could be deceived, just because it's possible, you should allow that to, I guess, I'll say like militate or like undermine your other beliefs. And I don't think that's a legitimate principle. As we like do philosophy, as we like try to love knowing truth and reality. So that's kind of a key part there. But sort of spectrum picture, I love that because it makes me think of MJ's comment to Peter where she says something about, here's the degree of confidence I had that you are Spider-Man. But maybe, can we watch that scene?
Yeah, let's do it.
That doesn't make any sense because we were there, right? There was fire and destruction, and who would do something like that?
Mysterio.
I am Spider-Man, and I really messed up.
Wait, you're being serious right now? Mm-hmm. You're not joking with me? Like you're 100% serious because it's not funny?
No, I'm not joking.
Because I was only like 67% sure.
MJ?
So why are you here? Why
MJ?
Why are you on this school trip?
MJ, look, I know you have a lot of questions, but look, we really have to get out of here, okay?
Okay. I can't believe I figured it out.
I believe I figured it out.
Yeah, so what's cool about that is that she is putting a percent on how certain she is about the knowledge that she's banking her decisions on, kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, she's been gathering. She was in, what was it, Washington, D.C. incident where Peter sneaks off. Not certain, not totally, but it was like, that's an interesting moment. That time at the theater, just there was another time, and kind of like a cumulative case that Peter is Spider-Man. So, but what's nice about that is it illustrates something that really is true about what can kind of feel like particularly foggy or mysterious about our growing knowledge and what we believe in. And I've heard J.P. Moreland, a philosopher, who spoke about this, and it was almost like a coaching moment in my recollection. It was like when you realize you're not sure about something or your belief is only so strong, you need to give more attention. Like basically, if you don't know if there's a thing on the roof, you go on the roof more and you check it out and you double check and you look at it from a different angle, or you hear other arguments, or you hear counter arguments. You just sort of explore the space, and that increases your confidence in whatever belief you have about that thing, whatever seems to be true about it. And it's not a kind of automatic thing that we can just choose. And I think his illustration was, we don't just choose to believe there's a pink elephant in the room. It was a pink light. Maybe there is a pink elephant. Oh no. But you can't just choose it. You'd have to, this would be a weird thing to pursue, but you'd have to like look at the evidence.
Yeah.
And if you started seeing a little bit of evidence, like a footprint here and there or something, you might say, okay, that's a little bit, but then you start looking around the house and you're saying, maybe there's an elephant around the house. So that's sort of the nature of how we build the strength of our beliefs and our confidence that something's true. And that really is looking at evidence that helps us see more fully that this claim of knowledge corresponds to reality.
Yeah.
And it's not, usually things that are true don't just touch one part of reality. It kind of shows up in a lot of places. And so, like her, like MJ, she was seeing the truth kind of showing up in a lot of different places, and she was willing to give the attention, pulling the pieces together.
Yeah, I think that leads me to the last topic that we wanted to touch on, and we could watch this last scene to take a look at that.
Everywhere I go, I see his face, and the whole world is asking who's gonna be the next Iron Man. I don't know if that's me happy. I'm not Iron Man.
You're not Iron Man. You're never gonna be Iron Man. Nobody could live up to Tony. Not even Tony. Tony was my best friend. And he was a mess. He second-guessed everything he did. He was all over the place. The one thing that he did that he didn't second-guess was picking you. I don't think Tony would have done what he did if he didn't know that you were going to be here after he was gone. And your friends are in trouble. You're all alone. Your tech is missing. What are you going to do about it?
I'm gonna kick his ass.
But I mean, right now, like specifically, what are we gonna do? Because we've been hovering over a tulip field for the last 15 minutes.
Right.
All right.
Off we go. Maybe the next Iron Man in the house. But he wasn't sure. He was wrestling with something.
Yeah, I really appreciated that piece of it, because I think what can happen is skepticism can make the bar unreasonably high when it comes to knowledge that we're allowed to act on or allowed to put weight on. And what I like about what you were even saying earlier is that there's a valid view of a spectrum where you can say, hey, I have a greater degree of certainty in this. I have a 51% degree of confidence is a better way to say it. And so I'm going to move in that direction. And I think ultimately, even if it's possible we are being deceived by an evil demon, or even if it's possible that some belief that we hold dearly is not true, there's a valid place for taking a deeper look at it and saying, hey, I can either disprove this or I can add to my confidence in this area, and it's worth the pursuit of that, because certainty isn't required for us to start acting on beliefs that we hold in confidence in some way.
Yeah, that's a good point. And he's stuck in this situation. It's a funny moment where Happy says, like, well, what are we going to do? It's like a very, like, practical. It's like he's come to have some confidence of, like, I should take a step. I know what I want to do. But he's like, well, you got to make a choice right now. There's some specific thing you need to live out. Are we staying in this tulip field or are we not? And I think that's true of our lives. We like reality in our life impress upon us that we are living out some sort of combination of things that we're confident about, more or less. And we get on the plane. This is true for Peter Parker and all of us, you know. Think of that. But I love that about the kind of feeling of certainty. It's so beautifully illustrated where Happy says about Tony, kind of addressing an assumption maybe that Peter had, or a feeling he had, and he hadn't really examined it. He says, basically, like, in case you were thinking like Tony like had it figured out, like was like the best, and like you're seeing his face everywhere, and you're feeling like you need to compare yourself. Tony was, I mean, he was like you, like he second guessed himself a lot. You know, he wasn't sure, but like Tony obviously got his hands in the mix and figured stuff out. But he wasn't like some perfect person who knew it all, even though he was really smart as a character. So I think there's an encouraging thing, a hopeful thing for all of us to say, hey, like you said, there are steps we can take to grow in an area that we know is important and is worth understanding better and growing in confidence. And that's what we do either sometimes accidentally, like something shows up and we're like, oh, that's not true anymore because I just saw some really good evidence. Or we're like, wow, that's really confidently true because I saw it more face to face in a certain kind of way, or I heard a really good argument related to it. So anyways, I feel encouraged by that scene. It's just a beautiful combination of his growing knowledge, this sort of character, and like it's like a mentor coaching moment where he knew exactly this assumption or this belief that maybe Peter was wrestling with.
Yeah, excellent scene and a super great wrap up for this topic for today. I'm sure there's more of epistemology that we can take a look at. But as always, it's been so fun having you guys join us, and we love talking about philosophy and film. And if there's a film that you love that you'd love us to talk about in terms of philosophy, feel free to leave it in the comments. If there's more from this film that stuck out to you, we'd love to hear what your thoughts were. And so with that, make sure to swing back next time.